Please welcome to the stage, co-founder of Telm, Baz Wouterse, and Microsoft's Josh Holmes.
Good afternoon.
Woo! Everybody back from lunch?
Wow. Okay, so we're here in Portugal. I did this morning. There's a few people that I recognize that were here this morning. Let's try this again. Good afternoon. Thank you. How was lunch? It was good? All right. So I'll be honest, when I was asked to MC and asked to do a little bit of opening remarks and such on the DeepTech stage, I can't tell you how excited I was. Because I love technology. Who loves technology? If you didn't raise your hand, you might be in the wrong room. And the wrong conference. Because this stage is representative of the most exciting technology that is on the planet, that is coming to the planet in the next handful of years. But we wanted to take a minute, Bas and I wanted to take a minute to step back and put some of this innovation in perspective. We wanted to take a step back and look at how did we get to here and what has been the pace of innovation to this point.
Exactly. So we want to introduce new sandals to you. Now, we're first looking at transportation. Transportation started out with us just walking, and about 3,500 BC. Oh, the clicker. Yeah, there we go. 3,500 years BC, the Mesopotamian wagon finally started to happen. So that's over 5,000 years ago. And then a few years later, quite a few years later, we finally got a follow-up, actually a car. And with that car, we also, about the same, I think there's a 2-year difference, we also got steam trains coming in. So we finally had mobility, more mobility to visit other people in other sections in the world. That followed up 50 years later with an airplane, or 150 years later, sorry, 150 years later with an airplane.
So let me just double check and make sure I understand the math on this right.
Yeah.
So early on in the humanity cycle, we invented the sandal.
Yeah.
And that was the primary means of communication.
Absolutely.
Until about 5,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about many hundreds of thousands of years, it was a sandal.
It was walking all the way.
And then for 5,000 years, it was a wagon.
Yeah, just the invention of the wheel was like 5,500 years ago.
And then we got a car.
Yep.
And then less than 150 years later, we're flying.
Yep. And
that sounds like a rapid innovation path there.
And we're not even halfway. If we look at the current state of technology that we're using, we are iterating new mobility possibilities and solutions on a weekly basis. There's stuff like this even coming in right now that you can use. And by the way, it's a loophole in the law, because at some location you cannot skateboard, but you can actually use these, and it works the same as a skateboard. So it's awesome. So the police goes like, you got me there. There's new technology like electronic scooters and steps all around the streets of Lisbon. There's even more and more fun stuff coming in. There's even a talk today on flying cars. Finally, we've been talking about flying cars for a few decades now, and finally the technology is at that life cycle that these kind of Airbus solutions are being able to be made. But it's getting more rapid and rapid new solutions. The iterations are getting shorter and shorter and shorter for new solutions. If you look at the scale on that, it's look like what you call it, a hockey stick graph? A hockey stick graph, and it just goes so much shorter and shorter and shorter for every solution's being built. On that footnote.
Is travel the only industry that's happened in?
Nope. Look behind you, sir.
No, it is not. So, spoiler, I'm going to talk about a different industry. So let's talk about food. How many people eat? If you didn't eat, I'm not sure how you're still here, right? So, but we started out as gatherers. And that sustained us for many years, hundreds of thousands of years. And then we started farming. And, sometime about 10,000 years ago, they invented the plow. And they attached it to horses and oxen. that sustained us really up until the last couple of centuries. In fact, my great-grandfather was actually plowing with 2 horses and a plow in 1962. In 1962, he dropped dead of a heart attack behind his plow. That's crazy to think about. That in my generation, I've known people who were plowing by hand. And yet, as we go forward, we started getting into machines. And it was really kind of crazy because the first time I ever saw GPS in action, it was in 1987-ish. We were doing rice farming, and in rural Arkansas. And Arkansas is kind of a weird little state. The north half of it is all mountains. The south half of it is all marshes and flatlands. Great for growing rice. They actually export more rice than the country of Japan does. They don't grow as much, but they export more. And then, but we had a guy come out with a laser, and he leveled the entire field as far as where all of the heights were, and he drew a map, and we loaded that onto a big air quotes laptop. By laptop, I mean it was about 45 pounds, and it was a luggable, not really a laptop. And so what he did is we actually loaded this laptop up with the map, and he drove around making all the levees so that all the paddies would be even and hold the water at the right level. That was crazy. Thinking about the fact that in 1962, my great-grandfather was plowing with 2 horses and a plow, and in 1987, I was sitting here watching GPS navigation of a tractor. Crazy innovation. Now, we've gone beyond that, where that tractor that's on the screen behind me does not actually have a driver. It's an autonomous tractor, and the drone flying behind it is actually providing the navigation and telling it where to go, what the obstacles are that it can't see, that a human would know about, that the tractor may or may not be able to actually see. So that is incredibly rapid innovation when you think about hundreds of thousands of years of plowing by hand to autonomous tractors in less than a century.
Absolutely. That's not only the only field that we're seeing improvements that we'll be talking about this on this amazing stage. But there are some people coming out this afternoon that will go like, holy moly, this is just amazing. That age, having such a track record, amazing. Also, communication is one of those areas that has such a hockey stick improvement. If we look back just a little bit at the improvements that we've done, we started out with pigeons moving letters across. And it's not that long ago that we finally replaced that by using a telephone. With the coming of the telephone, not the first one, because you couldn't talk to anybody, you needed somebody on the other side, we finally could communicate over long distances, and we're able to discuss intercontinental and have intercontinental discussions within minutes. Now, if you look back, then internet has changed that so much. Tim has had a good opening speech also on stage on what the improvements are and that internet should be accessible. It's just on the breach of 50% availability for all the people in the world that have internet. So we actually have still a long way to go. But if you look at the possibilities that are even out in the, I used to also work in Brazil, in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, there's just people now who actually have usable mobile phones. And they have access to the internet right now on locations in Africa that we thought never were possible that they would have any communication. The infrastructure is improving on such a rapid speed now that the iterations you see there are getting shorter and shorter and shorter as well.
Go back 2 slides.
2 slides back?
Yes. How many people had a rotary phone? Can you remember dialing the rotary phone? Like one of my like hardcore heartbreak moments when I was in high school was there were tickets for a Def Leppard concert, and it was a radio contest, and you had to be the certain dialer in. It was like it was 102, and you had to be the 102nd dialer to call in, and to call into the radio station to enter this contest. And the radio station, their phone number, you ended up dialing it as 9. I was the 99th caller. I was so upset because I dialed back immediately and I was the 140th caller. It took that long to dial these phones. People don't remember that.
No, there's also a fun fact about the emergency number of the UK.
Yes.
It used to be 999.
Yes.
Like, what? What were you thinking? We have an emergency. I think he died there. Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
You're too late.
You already had your heart attack and you were gone, right?
You're gone. What were they thinking? 112 is way better.
Yes, yes. Well, so, but my phone number, I'm not going to give my whole phone number, but my phone number is 999-7911.
Oh.
Because 999 was the emergency number in the EU.
Yep.
911 is the emergency number in the US.
Yep.
So in an emergency,
Yeah.
you call Josh. So, but I remember when I moved from Arkansas to Ohio to go to college, it cost me $4 to call my parents. It was a great excuse not to call my parents because long distance. That was crazy. But I was talking to somebody last night and telling them about the story, about the stories we were going to tell, and they were talking about a time when they moved down to Spain for a couple of months, and one of the challenges that they had was that they had to go to the post office. Now this is in the late 80s, early 90s, but they had to go to the post office because the post office had the international phone. The international phone.
Yep.
How many of you are here not from Portugal? How many are international right here? How many of you have phones on you? If you don't have a phone on you, I'm pretty sure you're in the wrong room. And how many of you can make calls today on your phone that is in your pocket? Yeah. That's a long way in 30 years. It's kind of crazy, kind of amazing to think about.
Did you see the mobile phones from a few years ago, actually? If you even compare them with now, you go like, what? Even if you see the Matrix, you go like, oh, that's not a good phone anymore.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely crazy how far we have come in that short of amount of time.
Absolutely.
So as you're thinking about the speed of technology, and as you're thinking about all of these things, it is amazing to think about the speed of the innovation that we have had and the hockey stick effect of how fast we've been innovating. Because as we think about technology today, and we're looking at the phone that is in your pocket, and how many people have a phone that is more than 3 years old in your pocket? There's a handful of you, okay? But realize that your phones, every single one of you, including the ones who have a more than 3-year-old phone, that phone has more memory and CPU than the space shuttles that went to the moon. That is amazing to think about the power that is in our own pockets. So to get on with the rest of the day, what I would like to do is I'd like to invite one of the people that's talking about this next new exciting innovation. They're actually talking about flying cars in cities from the future. And they have raised over $100 million to talk about a taxi service with flying drones. So with that, please welcome Remo Gerber to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.